Okay, so dear participant, thank you for joining us today. My name is Caroline Aymon. I'm the Director General of the International Dairy Federation, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this IDF webinar that will showcase the work of Soy Agriculture Initiative. I want to remind you that this event is being recorded and that we will be taking questions at the end of all the presentation, and we ask you please to put them in the chat so that we can ask them to the speaker at that time. So I'd like to recall, I would like you to recall that the Sustainable Dairy Partnership was launched by Soy Platform at the IDF World Dairy Summit in Istanbul on September 23rd, 2019. It then makes sense that we present to our community of experts and stakeholders the evolution of the project. In a nutshell, the B2B initiative led dairy supply chain to collaborate to shift sustainable performance on farm. This webinar will explain in details the Sustainable Dairy Partnership, which is a sustainability approach developed by Soy for use in the commercial relationship between dairy customer, buyers, and their suppliers, processors. You will notice in the presentation later that the sustainability performance area, which must be covered by a processor management system, are based on the Dairy Sustainability Framework that we call DSF. It is worth mentioning that both IDF and Soy Platform are part of the DSF governance, and that Soy Platform and DSF work closely together to align the projects. One should also note that the DSF was not designed to be used in commercial relationship at first, and it covered the full value chain. The SDP builds on the DSF approach, negating the need to develop yet another standard or form of certification. The DSF and SDP are totally complementary. The DSF remains the dairy sector progress monitoring, reporting, and tracking model, and the SDP enables the DSF approach to be applied in commercial relationship where more confidential data and information can be managed. A final word on IDF work, which focuses on developing and promoting sustainable practices across the dairy supply chain and providing science-based guidance and leadership on dairy sustainability issue, such as, for example, the revision of the methodology on carbon footprint in the dairy sector. Therefore, we have here today a topic that engages dairy farmers, co-op, companies, and retailers in promoting the reporting of sustainable practices. In this case, with a new tool that allows to share of information. It is part of IDF mission to ensure that dairy is produced as sustainable as possible. If you are interested in learning more about ongoing activities and work at IDF, you can actually look at the latest initiative to ensure sustainable dairy through the IDF Sustainability Outlook publication that you can find on our website. With this, I want to wish you a great webinar, and we'll want to pass the control to Patricia Garcia from the Soy Platform, who will be the moderator for the event and will introduce you the speaker. Thank you for your time and have a great event.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Caroline, for hosting us, and thanks very much to your team and for supporting us in bringing our message to the global dairy community. I am Patricia Garcia Diaz, Dairy Director at Soy Platform, and have been responsible for the Dairy Working Group and the development of the Sustainable Dairy Partnership over the last 4 years. Today, we would like to celebrate our achievement of reaching this significant milestone in our journey. The SDP Reporting Hub is live and accessible to members of our Dairy Working Group. It has been a journey of 4 years for both dairy buyers, dairy processors, and national programs representing about 30% of the global dairy traded volumes. Before we start with the agenda, I would like to invite Bruno and Claude to share their perspectives about the SDP and why they believe in the importance of a collaborative dairy industry. Bruno Speyer is the global category leader at milk powders and milk fat at Nestle, and Klaas-Jan van Kalker is a global dairy sustainable sourcing manager at Unilever. Bruno?
Yes, thank you, Patricia. Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So what I can say is that for many years, Nestlé is engaged in enhancing the quality of life of our consumers and in a broader way, our communities. So for a food company, quality of life naturally comes with food quality, food safety and nutrition. But very quickly, the concept of quality of life has expanded to many other topics of concern, which are widely shared globally and which provide a more comprehensive perspectives, like are the product that I'm producing or the product that I'm consuming as a user, are they produced in a sustainable manner, respecting the environment, respecting the people, or respecting animal welfare? So Nestlé is engaged at all levels of the company to take these topics to the highest priority level. So we also made a public announcement on our commitment to the Paris Pledge on climate. More recently, actually 2 weeks ago on September Patricia, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, I thought there was. I thought I heard the question. So,
internet hiccup. We left when you were talking about the Paris Agreement.
Okay, so now actually on the top of the Paris Agreement, what I was saying is that more recently we took another engagement. It was 2 weeks ago on September 16, where we announced our plans to support and accelerate the transition to a regenerative food system that aims to protect and restore the environment, improve the livelihood of farmers, and enhance the well-being of farming communities. So this is ambitious. This is quite challenging commitment, and especially because we do not have all the answers to reach these objectives. And actually, I think that as an industry perspective, no one has all the answers. But working together, side by side, dairy processors and dairy users, we will test, learn, improve, and share practices to make a significant impact here. So SDP is for us such a platform that brings us all together, where processors and users can meet and share around animal welfare, human rights, regenerative agriculture, water management, climate. So it's a great initiative, and I'm looking forward to its expansion and to connect and collaborate with all of you to support a worldwide change in agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Claes-Jan, Unilever has a world-known responsible sourcing program. How can a company program embrace the SDP?
Well, I think first to say that it's very well said with Bruno, and we are very much aligned on this topic. Unilever announced this Unilever Sustainable Living Plan in 2010, and we developed a Sustainable Agriculture Code, and later on we renewed that in 2017. And in principle, these are checked with our suppliers and farmers through assessments initially and audits later on. In the dairy industry, many of our suppliers have very good sustainability programs. So it made much more sense to start benchmarking these programs against what we were aiming for, and many of these programs showed equivalence. So that's also what we said. Okay, well then let's use these programs and let's not start auditing again. And I think that's also the basis of the Sustainable Dairy Partnerships, where we work together, we accept the differences between dairy farming systems over the world. We accept that we need to work on impact for region ag, on climate and biodiversity, and we need to really work together. And I think that's basically the heart of the Sustainable Dairy Partnership, and how SDP can help Unilever to achieve our targets around sustainable sourcing, around climate, around biodiversity, but also can help our suppliers and the rest of the buyers of dairy products to really make progress as well. So that's why we made the decision within Unilever that we also say, okay, well, besides the schemes we have for Sustainable Agriculture Code, SDP will be accepted if there is a good impact program as an alternative for our sustainable sourcing policy.
Thank you, Claes-Jan. Those are very valuable insights. And now I would like to move with our program for today. Siobhan, can we go to the next slide, please? So we're here today to share with you how the Sustainable Dairy Partnership has evolved to become an industry solution that addresses within a business-to-business environment dairy sustainability challenges. We will walk you through the general context, who is part of the SDP, and what is the relation with Site Platform, how does the SDP work, what is the SDP reporting hub, and we'll close with a panel discussion where some of our members will share with you the value of the SDP to their companies. At the end, we'd like to go through very quickly to what you need to remember about the SDP and hopefully trigger you to contact us to find out more and see how you can join in our journey. Next slide, please. Our speakers of today, you met Bruno and Claes-Jan, and soon you will hear from Hansel New, Director of Sustainability Programs at Dairy Farmers of America, Audrey Oshia, Head of Environment and Sustainability Compliance at Glanbia, Aurelie Letortu, Senior Corporate Sustainability Manager from Friesland Campina, and Leon Moll, Director of Product Safety and Social Compliance at Ahold Delhaize. Very briefly, I would like to introduce you to Site Platform, the host of the SDP. I would like to mention that this is a member-led organization founded by Unilever, Danone, and Nestle almost 20 years ago, when they recognized that sustainable agriculture challenges could not be addressed on their own and therefore needed a pre-competitive space to work and collaborate together. Today, we represent 150 organizations from the food and beverage sector, and besides dairy, we look into multiple commodities. Next slide, please. Our dairy working group was established in 2004. It covers about 30% of the global milk traded volumes, and our drive is to push the sustainability agenda of the sector. Next slide. This is a glance of the members of our group. You will see the split between very balanced combination of dairy buyers and dairy processors, as well as national programs such as Dairy Australia, the Innovation Center for US Dairy, and Board BIA. At the same time, we have also different companies related to the supply chain of dairy. Next slide, please. Having said that, and with all these very insightful introductions, I'll hand over to Hansel New. He is currently the SDP chair of the group, and he has also led the technical work stream responsible for the creation of all technical documents and protocols of the SDP. Hansel?
Thank you, Patricia, and hello, everyone. It's good to see all you on this webinar hosted by our gracious host here. Thank you very much. For the Sustainable Dairy Partnership, I wanted to touch on just briefly, why we think the SDP is successful. And a couple of these points, Claes-Jan and Bruno have already touched on briefly, but one thing I'd like to bring out is that it does recognize and it reinforces existing programs of dairy processors. Specifically, it's built upon the management systems of dairy processing companies. And why that's significant is a couple different things. Number one is it recognizes that dairy is complex. Dairy has very complex supply chains, as I'm sure we all know. And it helps avoid this one-size-fits-all approach, which can challenge some processor systems or some management system approaches. It also helps avoid duplication of effort. So it helps align dairy buyers and processors. So everyone can come together to the same table and align on one assurance system. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we get into the stages matrix, which Audrey will talk about here in a few minutes. I should mention also that the SDP is built upon a continuous improvement framework. which is, of course, important for all of us and ensures that we recognize where processors are at today, and then helps lay out a pathway to improvement through the stages matrix as buyers and processors come together through this platform. It also helps level the playing field between buyers and processors. We all come to the table as equals, and so it helps. This B2B framework helps facilitate cooperation and helps move beyond compliance. And as Bruno mentioned so eloquently as well, it brings us all together so we can work on these things together between buyers and processors. Can we go to the next slide, please? As has already been mentioned in the opening comments as well, the SDP is built upon, and critically so, is built upon the dairy sustainability framework. The DSF helps set, importantly, the overarching goals and aligns the dairy sector on really a global path to dairy sustainability that keeps us on the same page. It ensures that we're all speaking a common language, and it allows that dairy processors in any part of the world really can align on a similar approach, a similar journey toward global dairy sustainability. As Patricia mentioned during her opening comments, the site platform then gives us this space to come together pre-competitively to align on these principles of the DSF, and builds upon the foundation of the DSF by giving us this B2B framework, this way to exchange ideas, this way to report against progress of sustainability, again through the SDP framework and the stages matrix. Next slide. So this will be a review for most, but just a reminder that the Dairy Sustainability Framework really covers all aspects of global dairy sustainability, from greenhouse gas emissions, working conditions, rural economies, water conservation, as well as water quality, the critical importance of animal care. And all of these things are ways in which the dairy sector can align. And what's important also about the management system approach of the SDP is how it uses the foundation of materiality to look at these 11 criteria and to help dairy processors then go through this process of materiality to help determine what is most critical to them. If we can move to the next slide, please. And materiality analysis, for those who may not be familiar with it, is simply a formal process of gathering key stakeholder feedback and information in order to prioritize what matters most for an individual processor that fits their geographic location. It fits their context, so that, as we all realize, nobody can do everything well exactly the same across the board. We all have to choose priorities for what is most important for our particular context, business needs, and customer relationships. And so a materiality assessment or analysis is simply a globally recognized way to do that. And the SDP does recognize a global framework of materiality assessment, which helps dairy processors then to align on these by gathering that stakeholder feedback. This will be feedback both internally and externally as well from key stakeholders in order to help set those initial priorities to begin advancing through the SDP framework. Next slide. So to get into just a few of the details of the SDP management system and what is required, starting out, we talk about these, what we call foundational elements. These are critical areas that, of course, must be a part of a management system approach. I mentioned a little bit earlier that the SDP builds upon existing management systems, but management systems need to have these foundational elements in them. And we'll go walk through these a little bit, but high level here, you can see compliance to local legislation, a focus on ensuring the human rights of all individuals within the supply chain, a strong commitment to animal care and welfare, and a commitment to no deforestation and supply chain. Next slide. Here you can see also, and Patricia mentioned this during her opening comments as well, but the SDP does lay out in specific detail what precisely is required in each of these foundational elements, and you can find those key documents on the SDP website as well for additional background and information. But high level here, you can see that compliance to local legislation, of course, and again, this is at the farm level. And for some of these foundational elements, there are some set specific criteria. For example, under animal welfare, for example, there's a requirement for no dehorning without the use of local anesthesia or analgesia, plus no tail docking. And for some criteria, like human rights, there are specific examples of supply chain risk assessment that processors need to go through to help understand and assess the risk in their particular supply chains, and then assess those against, again, in the human rights example, understanding the foundation of ILO conventions, United Nations guiding principles, and globally recognized labor codes are used as guidance for those risk assessments. Next slide, please. So we mentioned briefly that the SDP is unique in its approach. It's unique in that it focuses on and recognizes existing management systems, but also has that continuous improvement focus. So when we think about the pieces at a basic level of dairy supply chains, we have, of course, farmers, we have dairy processors who take the raw milk from the farmers, process it into ingredients that are then sold to dairy buyers. And many times in complex global supply chains, you have a lot of overlap and complexity between different requirements between different buyers and their processors, different levels of compliance depending on country of origin, for example, and what can be a lot of, in many cases, complex and very inconsistent demands, which can bog down requests, can bog down information sharing between dairy buyers and processors, et cetera. And what the SDP strives to do is to really streamline this approach through the B2B framework. If we look at the next slide, please. Klaus-Jan mentioned this as well in his opening comments as well, but different levels of compliance or requests for on-farm audits from different companies can also really increase the strain and burden upon dairy farmers. And the SDP then helps to streamline that through this consistent global approach as well. So now instead of these, what can be conflicting or complex or redundant requests from buyers to processors, we now, through the DSF 11 criteria, we have a global aligned approach. We have a consistent way of measuring progress through the SDP stages matrix, the 5 stages that we will walk through here in just momentarily. And it's a single verification approach. So there's still external verification that begins at stage 3, but it is consistent, and it allows dairy processors, therefore, to focus on things that matter most in their supply chains, to better understand what the expectations are from dairy buyers, and work with dairy buyers from around the world to collaborate again beyond simple compliance to begin moving the needle on sustainability progress. Next slide, please. And I believe from here, we are going to pass it off to Aubrey.
Thanks very much.
Are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. So thanks very much for Hansel to taking us through the why and the how. And now I'm going to tell you exactly what is the Sustainable Dairy Partnership journey. So what is the expectation, and how will processors like us be expected to represent our sustainability journey and the continual improvement of our dairy supply chain? So the SDP as a tool has been designed to systematically demonstrate, deliver and improve the sustainability criteria. Essentially, the Sustainable Dairy Partnership outlines the continual improvement and growth journey for dairy processors through the 5 stages. It is important to remember that for us in Ireland, our SDAS and Origin Green audits are recognised by the buyers and are an extremely valuable, efficient process that, in conjunction with the SDP, allows the Irish dairy supply chain to systematically demonstrate and deliver improved sustainability criteria, while reducing the need for multiple customer on-farm audits, thereby allowing us as processors and our farmers to concentrate on what really matters and giving us back the time to work on farm for those continual improvements. The early stages of the journey and the focus on the management system that can later deliver real impact for the key performance indicators. Next slide, please, Siobhan. So what does the 5-stage approach entail for dairy processors? Well, in stage 1, the processor commits to embarking on the Sustainable Dairy Partnership journey. And in stage 2, it's really about identifying and prioritising what matters. By stage 3, the process involves setting goals, putting programs in place to enable improvements on the priority areas. The SDP guidelines indicate that the first 3 stages should be implemented within 3 years. Stage 4 represents the improvement and reporting phase, and for stage 5, our goal is aspirational, to get to a place where we have achieved beneficial results for all of the 11 DSF criteria, and where we as companies then continue to encourage and inspire others on the sustainability journey. Next slide, please. Today, the main elements of the SDP toolkit includes the stage matrix, which is a roadmap to demonstrate a processor's maturity along the sustainability journey, technical documents, which include the SDP requirements document and the verification protocol. And this is really to help companies and verifiers understand the necessities and to work through the process. The SDP reporting hub. This is a reporting tool that allows processors to upload their proof points stage by stage, subject by subject, and it also provides the buyers with a clear sight of processors' sustainability commitment, level of effort and performance. And finally, the SDP Learning Centre. Today, this is a website containing all of the information that you will need, including very helpful instruction videos. Next slide, please. As mentioned already, the stage matrix is a clear roadmap that summarises requirements for all 5 stages. Next slide, please. For example, at each stage, specific progress is required. So at stage 1, it's important to endorse the 11 DSF criteria as previously shown by Hansel, and just a few minutes ago. And to remind you that the DSF criteria includes topics like greenhouse gases, rural economy, product safety. And also the foundational elements must be endorsed. And again, to remind you, these include compliance to local legislation, human rights, animal welfare and deforestation. It's really important to note that the 4 foundational elements must be addressed appropriately throughout all 5 stages of the SDP, and this is a non-negotiable feature of the SDP. At stage 2, we talk about the implementation of the foundational elements, including all legal requirements and the prioritization of same. And this is done by conducting what we call the materiality analysis. At stage 3, it's the implementation of the Plan, Do, Check, Act of the DSF and looking for external assurance. By the time you get to stage 4, we look for time-bound sustainability targets endorsed by external stakeholders. And at stage 5, this is really about consistent delivery against the time-bound targets and demonstration of continual positive improvement. Next slide, please. So it's important to understand that membership and commitment to the continuous improvement of the dairy sustainability framework is the foundational block on which the SDP is built. The foundational elements, evaluation, reporting, and stakeholder dialogue are all key activities that are carried on throughout the 5 stages by the implementing companies. Next slide, please. Another important feature is the timeline expectation. So the timeline expectation for the completion of stages 1 to 3 is 3 years, and this again aligns to the DSF membership commitments and implementation guidelines. For the processors that may find themselves at stage 4, the requirement is to update the materiality analysis at least every 3 years and to have it externally verified. Next slide, please. For example, by the stage 3 external verification of the foundational elements, the materiality assessment is required. By stage 4, KPI-based reporting and time-bound targets will be externally verified and endorsed by the external stakeholders. The expectation of those demonstrating consistent delivery against time-bound targets in stage 5 will be an integrated reporting system, and that the Sustainability Improvement Programme evaluation will be externally verified. For those who are looking at this for the first time, it may seem a little daunting, but don't worry. That is why the Dairy Working Group members and colleagues in our companies have worked tirelessly to help create user-friendly technical documents for your use. Next slide, please. The group have developed a set of documents to help you, and these include the scope document. This helps stakeholders understand the SDP implementation process. The requirements document. This helps to define the requirements that must be met at each stage of the SDP. And then we've also developed the verification protocol. This document will guide the verification by third-party organisations to ensure that a consistent approach is followed. Again, it's really important for you to know that these documents have been developed to help you work through the activity requirements at each stage. These documents clearly explain how the processor can demonstrate their progress on implementing the key elements of the Sustainable Dairy Partnership. Next slide, please. And this then brings us to the SDP Reporting Hub. So what is the Reporting Hub? Basically, the SDP Reporting Hub is an IT tool that is available for you to use as a reporting platform that easily and conveniently allows processors to report progress and share progress with the buyers. It ensures a consistent reporting approach and helps to bring business transparency and efficiency. The purpose of the SDP Reporting Hub is to simplify the communication among buyers and their suppliers, and essentially to act as a one-stop shop. Next slide, please. There were a number of key principles that both processors and buyers wanted to ensure, which guided the development of the Sustainable Dairy Partnership Reporting Hub. So one of the most important principles was that it should be user-friendly. It should simplify reporting internally and externally between buyers and suppliers. It should be a trusted environment, ensuring a secure and confidential platform. It should ensure scalability and flexibility, And what we mean by that is that as producers, you can choose who you share your reports with. And for companies that are based in multinational locations, it can be broken down into geographical location reports that make sense for your own company reporting. It can be used by multiple parties within an organization. So the relevant subject matter expert in each area, for example, animal welfare might be very different to carbon mitigation, but the relevant people in each area can be given access and input their data into the tool. And it's also to ensure that companies that are part of existing programs, such as the US Innovation Dairy Centre or Dairy Australia, can utilise what already exists and not have to repeat information that has already been used and reported in another sustainability programme report. Next slide, please. So quickly moving on to the key features, this is a snapshot of some of the features that you will be presented with when you open the SDP reporting hub. In an ideal world, we would have liked to have been able to show you this in a video, but decided against that today. As with such a large attendance, I believe there's more than 160 out there, and Wi-Fi coverage around the various geographies, we did not want to take the risk as it may not work as smoothly as we would like. But I would like to remind you about the terrific learning centre that has been developed and invite you to take a look at the video that demonstrates the look and feel of the SDP reporting hub and how the tool can be used quickly and intuitively for both buyers and processors alike. And here we see examples of the supplier directory, which displays possible suppliers that are connected to possible buyers, how multi-region reports are displayed and processed to completion highlighted for each region. So showing the processor and the user how much effort has been completed and what's left to do. The matrix overview and the SDP report that will show the buyers how far a processor is on their sustainability journey. Next slide, please. As I've already mentioned, we have a terrific learning centre available to new and existing SDP members. The Dairy Working Group have co-created and developed this valuable resource that is the Learning Centre. In the Learning Centre, you will find the amazing resources on key topics to help you in all understanding and participating in the SDP, such as videos that aim to be user-friendly and informative, and the documents that instruct and guide users on all of the SDP requirements. Next slide, please. So finally, why are we doing all of this? Well, it's quite simply because sustainability matters. And to that end, the SDP enables all of us to work together in a consistent and transparent way to continually improve the dairy sector. And now I shall hand you back to Patricia.
Thank you, Audrey. Thanks for that amazing presentation. I think there's no one better than you in the group that can describe exactly what it is. We're all aware that it's a rather complex process, but well explained, makes it easy to follow and understand. So now I would like to invite our panelists, I think, to the screen. I think there is nothing more powerful than the testimony of our members to showcase our work. So I'd like to invite Aurélie and Leon, and back to Bruno and Gracian, and Audrey to stay there to have a little bit of a conversation. And for all of you who have some questions, please start writing them on your chat. After our panel discussion, we'll cover those. So, Aurélie, how will the SDP change your working ways with the multiple customers of Friesland Campina?
Yes, thanks, Patricia. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today. So for us, SDP is a very important tool within the Friesland Campina strategy. There are different advantages of it. The first one is that we are all talking one language and we have one framework throughout the industry. And the fact that we all talk the same language will really help us in our conversation with our customers. So we can really do a deep dive conversation for customers. It's clear where are key priority areas, where are the priority where we need to, where we feel that we still have extra work to be done. So actually, we can openly talk about our sustainability strategy and work together, because I really believe that sustainability is all about a collaborative work, so working together for the better. The second point I would say is really business efficiency. In the past, everyone was, so we as Friesland Campina, we were doing audit at the farm with our farmers, because we have a sustainability standard that is called Focus Planet. And within this standard, of course, we are auditing the farms of Friesland Campina. On top of these customers, we're asking us to do some audit at the farms. So it was really not efficient, and it's lots of money as well that were spent on these extra audits on the customer side, but also on our side. And for the farmers, it was also extra work, when actually the key focus area of a farmer should be to work on sustainability at the farm and not to only do audits on what they are doing. So now we have one audit per year, and that's led by Friesland Campina. And then all of our customers can use this audit for their own record. So, and of course, the last point is that SDP is allowing us to recognize our own sustainability standard. So it's a tool that will allow us to focus on the key focus area or key priorities area of Friesland Campina. And the tool can adapt to our priorities areas. So that's also a big win. And finally, now there is a great tool, the SDP Reporting Hub, where everyone can have access to our report. And so for the customers, in one click, actually, they can see several dairy suppliers, where they are, and like this, prepare in-house their own supply strategy. So in a nutshell, that's the advantages for Friesland Campina of working with SDP.
Thank you very much, Aurélie. That's a very good examples and very practical for those processors in the audience. Audrey, back to you. One of the SDP principles is the recognition of existing programs. How do you see the Origin Green program in Ireland fitting into the SDP?
Okay, thanks very much, Patricia. And look, just to build on exactly what Aurélie has said, we've faced multiple audits. So what the national programmes have done in Ireland, for example, with Origin Green and ESTAS, has allowed us to go out on farm under the Origin Green banner and carry out these audits. And then the efficiency of the SDP is that it will recognise national programmes just like Origin Green, and it will carry out a benchmarking approach. So Origin Green will be benchmarked against the SDP, and the equivalence, whether it be in the stages or the different areas, will be quite clearly and transparently displayed to the buyers. And what this then allows for companies like Glanbia and other companies around the world as part of national programmes is to identify if there's any gaps that their national programme doesn't fulfil, that we as a company can put forward the initiatives above and beyond the national programmes if that's what's required. But it really is all about efficiency in terms of reporting, because as we know, the demands in terms of our consumers and social society is pushing ever more the demands with respect to reporting. So I kind of refer to it almost as a one-stop shop to be able to upload the existing reports that have been independently verified and to have those benchmarked and to have that equivalency, will cut out an awful lot of additional reporting, and it will just streamline and make the whole process really efficient.
Thank you so much, Audrey. I think that we haven't given a voice yet to the retailers, and those are the final link to our consumers. So I would like to ask Leon Mol from Ahold Delhaize, as a retailer, what is your main value of the SDP? Leon?
Can you hear me now, Patricia?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Well, I'm very glad that as Ahold Delhaize, we were part of the development of this whole SDP, which was a learning curve for us as a retailer by itself, to be honest, because there is so much going on in the sector that we don't know. And that's exactly where also the benefit of the SDP comes in, because by definition, the food retail is far away from the farmer and even also from the processor in many cases. And we are not looking really for the SDP putting a label on pack, because that's what it definitely is not meant to do, but it puts a solid base under commitments that we need to make or that we want to make to the market and to our stakeholders. And that solid base is very much needed in a sector which is homogeneous on the shelf, but very much variable and differentiated when it comes to production conditions and so on. So for us, the SDP brings also uniformity. And in that way, we can also transmit a solid, strong voice to the market. And a few examples for that, we need to have a solid base when it comes to compliance level, for example. We need that legal compliance check. We like the foundational elements, because if we do any other claim on climate or any other thing, we need to make sure or be sure that the basics are right. So that's really important to us. And then, of course, if we go to a supplier with yet another audit, and that's what we are very much used to, they are not always that happy with us. And this actually puts us in the position with the SDP to stay away from that, to rely on the data that are on the platform, because we know that they are validated, they are credible. Maybe they are not always 100% complete, but then it's not too difficult to have the conversation with our suppliers. So it creates a huge transparency beyond our products that we sell.
Thank you very much, Leon. I have one last question for Bruno. Nestlé is a very, very big organization with a very, very large scope, not only regionally, but also within your teams. So the last question is about what are the benefits that the SDP can deliver to the procurement and sustainability teams in an organization like yours?
Thank you, Patricia. I think the very first thing maybe I would like to mention is that all the criteria that create the pillars of the sustainability dairy platforms are becoming preponderant criteria in our sourcing strategy these days. So, I mean, before we were really looking at ensuring supplies and making sure that we would be competitive in our finished product, selling to the retailers or selling to the end consumers. But I think that these criteria are becoming more and more important, and are really, let's say, the big weight in how and where and when we source. So that's the first element I wanted to highlight. And about the SDP, in addition to what I said before, is really, I think we really believe Nestlé cannot doing on its own. You know, okay, we cannot influence the industry globally. You said we are a very big player here. Yes, we are, and yes, we can influence sporadically and make a difference at a certain local level. But here we're talking about changing the industry, and it's too big. The whole industry has to move bold and fast. So really believe that it can be done through industry-wide initiatives, and SDP is a collaborative platform. So this is one of the advantages we see, is that it has an impact at industry level, not just at the Nestlé local level. Now, to talk a bit more concretely, for me as a procurement manager, what are the benefits? What are the goodies of of this platform? And that was interesting to listen to Audrey and really that represent the processors, and Leon that represent the retailers. I think that there is a lot of commonalities in the benefits, and the very first one is the commonality of language. Okay, and it's an element that is important to all of us, and we see that for a year now that I'm really stepping into the sustainability, or let's say more like the climate discussion and Regen Act discussions with our suppliers, agreeing on the same terms, what it means, how we look at it, how we measure is something that needs to be discussed again and again and again. And having a standard way of looking at that, an harmonized way, and a common way of putting things behind the words is a huge benefit, and we can save time there. Now, I would say there is another big element for me is also is that all my suppliers and everyone stepping into the platform will be assessed using the same criteria and verification elements. So there is also this commonality in the standardization here. So we know what is being achieved, and Audrey presented before the different stage, the 1 to 5 stage of the SDP, which basically tell us how far you are in your sustainability journey. So, and this is a key element for me in procurement. And the more we go, the more we have audits. We talk about quality audits, we talk about responsible sourcing audits, we talk about environmental audits and human rights, animal welfare, and so on. So the good thing is what we are doing now is we are linking at Nestlé our different internal responsible sourcing KPIs to SDP stage. So meaning that if you're a supplier of Nestlé and if you're part of the SDP and you're on stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will fit within a certain level of responsibility, responsible sourcing performance, which means that basically Nestlé will not approach you to assess the KPIs anymore. We will extract them from the platform. So it means that there will be no additional audits. There will be no specific Nestlé process to come and verify, and we'll have to agree on what needs to be done, and everything will be run through the SDP. So for me, as for the processors, it's a huge time being saved through this. And it also gives me, it creates confidence, and it gives me a level of your level of commitment into this topic and your sustainability journey. So that's very valuable. I think that's efficient. We avoid audits. We avoid a lot of time spent in defining protocols with processors. I think there's only benefit from how I see it from my side.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you.
Those are very valuable comments, and I think that stresses the purpose of the SDP. We really focus in creating the most effective systems, stopping the duplication of efforts, and releasing resources to be used in projects and programs that can really leverage value in the most relevant ways. Having said that, I would like to open the space for questions from the audience. I don't see any specific coming in except for one, and that will be for, I think, Lasyan. In some regions, the animal care practices are accepted. It's around the foundational elements. Does the user of the SDP need to stop these practices immediately, or they can put a plan in place for phasing out over time? Lasyan?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking in the chat and I couldn't. So, and at the same time, you know, I was looking for the question, and then you telling it. So can you please?
Yeah, sure. Yes, sure. It's in regards to the foundational elements. In some regions, the animal care practices are accepted. Does a user of the SDP need to stop these practices immediately, or they can put a plan in place for phasing out over time?
Well, in fact, you know, you go, you know, in the SDP, you go through stages, and of course, you know, to go from the one stage to the next stage, then you need to fulfill the requirements of that stage. You know, having said that, you know, it's not that you can just turn around practices in a day. So you always need transition periods. So I think that's part of the process. So we don't want to, have the criteria limiting people to make progress.
Great. Thank you, Klaas-Jan. I have a question from Vanessa, and I think, Hansel, it would be great for you to answer. So for the business who have had their own systems in place for many years and already have targets and set improvements in progress, will they start at stage 4? So they just plug their data into the new system, or they will go back to stage 1 and do a materiality analysis again?
Well, one of the benefits of the SDP is, again, that it's not starting over from scratch. So if a processor already has advanced systems, they've already gone through a verified materiality assessment and have goals and progress that they can report upon. Certainly at that point, it wouldn't be starting over again with stage 1. I think to get more into the details of that, I would recommend looking at the requirements document itself, which outlines the specifics of each stage. And again, you'll find with existing management systems that there is already a lot that you will have covered in that. And then it's just a matter of determining what stage that places you at when you overlay an existing management system over the SDP requirements, and then starting up from there. So it's not starting over from scratch. It's again overlaying where you're at with the particular stages matrix, and then picking up the progress from there. And maybe there's 1 or 2 things that still needs to have the box checked, if you will, in order to advance to the next stage. But it is fairly straightforward once you get into the management system.
Thank you, Hansel. Vanessa, if you want to learn more details, please contact us and we can explain you how would that all work. I have a specific question for Audrey. So implementing sustainability norms is a cost for developing countries. Currently, both processors and farmers are under pressure of low margins. Under these circumstances, how do you see the success of the SDP initiatives in the developing world?
Yes, so look, that's a really important question, and it's one that's being, kind of debated and considered many, many times within the dairy working group. And I think it's really important to emphasize it's what's material to the region, and it's about the getting on the journey and the progress that can be made in terms of working together. So nobody expects a farmer or one of the producers to be at that standard immediately and today. And the intention isn't to actually compare one with another or one region with another necessarily. The ambition and the integrity behind the SDP is actually to make sure that we all globally take a step in the right direction, and that we all look at what's material within our own region, and that we all work together to continually improve. And from a processor perspective, I suppose I might be privileged in that I have a different view and a different outlook in terms of the geography that I operate in, because it's Ireland. So I probably don't fully appreciate or understand, some of the issues in the developing countries. But I can assure you, if I pass over to my colleagues in Unilever or Nestle, and particularly Klaas-Jan, they're very passionate about bringing everybody on the journey, but bringing everybody at a certain pace, because unless it works for everybody, it won't work at all.
Thank you, Audrey. I have one question. Is the SDP works with self-assessment implementation approach, or they are assessments and implementation partners as well in system to help the supplier? Who would like to take that question?
So Patricia, I'm happy to comment on that.
Thank you.
So when you look at the SDP stages matrix again, you can see that as the sustainability journey progresses from stage 1, which is really the stage where suppliers set their commitments to the process, and then begin implementing programs and risk assessment to identify where they're at in their sustainability journey. There's certainly a role there for the internal assessment. You know, the processors go through that and they identify. You can bring in external parties, certainly. For example, on the materiality assessment, you're required to use an external party to help develop that, along with global criteria like the Global Reporting Initiative criteria. But then the external verification does not begin until one reaches stage 3. And specifically, external verification is required at stage 3 related to the compliance with the foundational elements, and also that external verification of the management system. So again, stages 1 and 2, it relies upon the internal assurance. And then at stage 3, there is a move to external assurance for specific aspects of the SDP. And I'll remind everyone on the webinar as well that because of the internal and external assurance and different levels of assurance that the SDP recognizes, there is also a claims guidance document for SDP users and SLI platform members as well that explains what you can say about externally the SDP journey and how that relates to the stages matrix.
Thank you, Hansel. I have another question. I understand that the reporting hub will ease verifying the current sustainability levels of suppliers. Do you intend to give insights on future levels of sustainability, for instance, with database simulations or of practices currently implemented, but that will only bring benefits in the short term?
Yeah, I can take that. You know, I think it's a good question. Currently, this is not part yet of the reporting hub, because we report on the achieved results and the impact created. But of course, if we look into the impacts we are looking for, then definitely we need to think through, okay, how can we develop these models, especially to support smallholders and farmers, to think through, okay, what measures can we take to actually, for example, reduce carbon footprints, and how will that work out on my farm? So that's, I think that's currently also where we see many developments of tools and models that are being developed, but that's currently outside SDP. So SDP, focuses on, reporting on, the delivered impacts, and has no, is not, modeling the future potential impacts yet.
Thank you, Klaas-Jan. I don't see any more questions coming in. So 1 minute. I think everything was clear. So before we close, Hansel, could you highlight what is the audience, what does this audience needs to remember about the SDP?
Sure, happy to, Patricia. So the SDP, again, is really unique in that it's been an opportunity for both buyers and processors to come together in this pre-competitive space to create and develop the SDP and its tools, which, again, as you've heard from the panelists on this webinar, there are benefits for both buyers and processors in this. A few of the benefits that have already been identified and that you've heard some about is that it creates a harmonized language and approach. It allows that commonality to be able to streamline that process and that communication channel, which is so critical between buyers and dairy processors. the SDP also helps quantify the sustainability journey. Again, with multiple systems, with audits that are overlapping, that's a very hard thing to do. And so the stages matrix that Audrey outlined really does help both buyers and processors to look at the sustainability journey together and to go on that journey together through the stages matrix. And then finally, I'll just mention briefly that it streamlines compliance for dairy processor and helps promote collaboration between dairy buyers and processors, which with critical areas in dairy sustainability is vital to ensuring that we're continuing to move the entire dairy sector forward in these important areas. So as you've seen, dairy buyers and processors are all coming to the table. We're excited for this SDP approach, and we really do aim for the SDP to become the one dairy solution to support dairy sustainability reporting in this collaborative B2B environment and space.
Thank you, Hansel, for that wrap up. Before we really close, I want to give a special thanks to Maria Sanchez from the IDF and for Caroline for hosting us, and also to Siobhan Bradley, our livestock officer, who has worked very hard behind the scenes to get us all aligned and get this webinar together. We hope you find this useful, and we will be happy to connect with you to share more about the SDP and hopefully get you on board. On the chat box, we will be sharing a link to our latest video where you can get our contact information and see and feel what we are and what we're meant to be. So I wish you all a rest nice of the day for those in Europe, in the US, and a good night for those based in Asia. Thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers, and we hope to see you soon to share more progress and impact of what we want to achieve with the SDP. It was a pleasure speaking to you today. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.